I've been invisible for 10 months. That's the truth of working in a house like Baek Junuk's. You learn to move through rooms like a ghost, present but never seen. My hands polish surfaces that gleam under lights I could never afford, fold sheets softer than anything I've ever slept on, and arrange flowers that cost more than my weekly groceries. The mansion sprawls across the Hollywood Hills like a fortress, all glass and stone and walls that overlook a city I can barely afford to live in. Baek Junuk himself is a shadow I've learned to predict. I hear his footsteps on the stairs, measured, deliberate, and know to be elsewhere. I catch glimpses of him through doorways, tall and imposing in dark suits that fit like armor, neck tattoos that crawl above his collar, and eyes like black fire that never quite land on me. He holds meetings in his study with men who speak in low Korean and leave through private exits. I clean up after them, empty ashtrays that smell of expensive tobacco, collect forgotten glasses still wet with soju. I don't ask questions. That's not my job. My job is to disappear. The only constant in this carefully ordered existence is Keisha. My cousin works in the kitchen, 24 years old with my grandmother's easy laugh and none of my caution. She makes breakfasts that smell like Sunday mornings and dinners that look like art, and every evening when our shifts end, we carpool back to our small apartment in Inglewood together. 2 bedrooms, thin walls, neighbors whose music shakes the floor at midnight, but it's ours. Well, rented. Barely afforded. I work the extra shifts when they're offered because I need every dollar. Because $52,000 in medical debt doesn't disappear on its own. Because my father had a stroke 2 years ago that took his speech, then his mobility, then his life 6 months later, and the bills kept coming long after his funeral. I signed payment plans I'll be honoring into my 40s, accepted interest rates that should be illegal, and learned to survive on faith and determination. My brother Marcus is finishing his last year at UCLA. Someone has to make sure he crosses that stage. So I clean. I fold. I polish. I accept overtime without complaint. Wednesday night, the clock in the main hall reads 10:15 as I finish wiping down the marble staircase. My shoulders ache from scrubbing grout in the 3rd floor bathroom, and my lower back protests when I bend to collect my cleaning caddy. October in Los Angeles means the rain comes without warning, and through the tall windows, I watch water begin to streak the glass. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. This story is going to shake you to your core. So, smash that subscribe. I read every single one comment here, so please drop your comments now. Let's begin. The Baek Mansion sits at the end of a private road that winds up into the Hollywood Hills like a secret the city keeps from itself. I've cleaned every inch of it over the past 10 months, every marble surface, every glass wall, every room that costs more than I'll make in a lifetime. I know which floorboards creak in the East Wing. I know that the orchids in the study need water every Tuesday and Friday. I know that the 3rd step from the top of the main staircase has a loose edge that catches on the vacuum cord if I'm not careful. I know this house better than I know my own apartment. And the house doesn't know I exist. That's by design. The first thing Mrs. Park taught me when I started, she runs the household staff with the precision of a general, was that good help is invisible help. Mr. Baek doesn't want to see you, she said, her Korean accent clipping each word into something sharp. He doesn't want to hear you. He wants to walk into a room and find it perfect, with no evidence of how it got that way. So I learned to be a ghost. I memorized his schedule within the first week. Breakfast at 7, always alone, always the same thing, black coffee and silence. Meetings in the study from 9 until noon, sometimes later. The men who come and go wear suits that cost more than my car and speak in Korean I can't understand, though I've picked up enough to know when voices turn dangerous. Lunch is taken in the garden when the weather permits, and by 3 o'clock he's usually gone, driving down the hill in one of the black SUVs that line the garage like sleeping predators. I clean around his absence. I arrange my tasks so that I'm never in the same room, never in his line of sight, never anything more than the faint smell of lemon polish lingering after I've already moved on. Keisha thinks I'm paranoid. He's just a man, Danny, she says, rolling out dough in the kitchen while I restock the linen closet down the hall. Rich, yeah. Scary, maybe. But still just a man. But I've seen the way the other staff members move when he's nearby. The way conversations stop. The way even Mrs. Park, who fears nothing and no one, lowers her voice and straightens her spine when his footsteps echo in the hallway. Baek Junuk is not just a man. He's a force of nature contained in a tailored suit, and I've survived this long by staying out of the path of the storm. Keisha doesn't understand because Keisha has never had to survive the way I have. She grew up with both parents, a house in Baldwin Hills, a college fund that actually existed. She took this job because she loves cooking and the pay is ridiculous. I took this job because my father's stroke left him trapped in a body that couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but cost money we didn't have. $52,000. That's what's left after insurance, after the fundraisers my church organized, after I sold everything that wasn't nailed down. $52,000 that follows me like a shadow, that wakes me up at 3 a.m. Doing math I already know won't work, that keeps me saying yes to every overtime shift even when my body screams for rest. And then there's Marcus. 22 years old, brilliant, finishing his last year at UCLA with a GPA that makes me want to cry with pride. He's going to be an engineer. He's going to build things, create things, be somebody. All he has to do is graduate, and all I have to do is make sure the money doesn't run out before he does. So I clean. I fold. I polish. I take the weekend shifts no one else wants. I hum Amazing Grace under my breath when the house feels too quiet and the weight of everything presses down on my chest. And I stay invisible. Because invisible is safe. Invisible is surviving. Invisible is the only thing standing between me and a world that has already taken too much. At least, that's what I believed. Until Wednesday night. Wednesday night. The rain starts just after 9, coming down in sheets that turn the windows into waterfalls and the garden into a blur of green and gray. I finish my shift at 10:15, later than usual because Mrs. Park asked me to deep clean the guest bathroom on the 3rd floor. Some business associate is coming tomorrow, and everything needs to be perfect. Everything always needs to be perfect. Keisha meets me at the service entrance, her chef's coat already swapped for a hoodie and jeans. She's frowning at her phone. Car won't start, she says before I can ask. Battery's been acting up all week. I knew I should have gotten it checked, but, she waves a hand, the universal gesture for money we don't have and time we can't spare. I can wait with you, I offer. Call a rideshare. No, no. She's already pulling up an app. My boy Terrence lives like 10 minutes away. He'll come get me. She looks up, notices I'm still standing there. Go, Danny. Your bus comes in 15 minutes. I'll be fine. You sure? Girl, go. I'll see you at home. I hesitate for a moment, but she's already on the phone, laughing at something Terrence said. Keisha has always been like that, surrounded by people who would drop everything to help her. She collects friends the way I collect overtime hours. I pull my hood up against the rain and step outside. The walk to the bus stop is 2 blocks. I've done it hundreds of times, usually with Keisha, sometimes alone when our shifts don't align. The neighborhood is safe, this is Baek Junuk's territory, and I've heard enough whispered conversations to know what that means. Protection. Order. Rules enforced by men who don't ask twice. But tonight the streets are empty. The rain has driven everyone indoors, and the storefronts are dark except for security lights that cast everything in shades of amber and shadow. My sneakers splash through puddles, soaking through within half a block. I keep my head down, focused on the familiar route, counting landmarks like my grandmother taught me to count blessings. The Korean barbecue place. The nail salon. The convenience store with the flickering sign. 1 block down. 1 to go. The alley appears on my right, narrow and dark between 2 buildings. I've passed it 1,000 times without a second thought. But tonight, 3 figures step out from the shadows, blocking the sidewalk ahead. I stop. Heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. Evening. The one in front speaks first. Asian, maybe Vietnamese, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. His companions flank him, one tall and wiry, the other built like a boxer gone soft. Evening, I manage, moving to step around them. The scarred one shifts, staying in my path. Where you going in such a hurry? Home. Excuse me. Hold up. He smiles, but there's nothing friendly in it. Just want to talk. The boxer moves behind me, cutting off retreat. My stomach drops. I don't want trouble, I say. No trouble. The scarred one holds up his hands. Just need your bag. Phone. Wallet. Nice and easy. My mind races through options. Scream, but who would hear over the rain? Run, but where? Fight, against 3 men twice my size. I pull my crossbody bag over my head with shaking hands and hold it out. He takes it, rifles through quickly, pockets my wallet. Then his eyes land on my shirt. My uniform. The small embroidered logo on the chest. He steps closer, rain plastering his face. Wait a second. His expression changes. You work at that house. The big one up the hill. Fear spikes cold through my veins. No. Don't lie. He grabs my collar, yanking me forward. I seen that logo before. You work for the Korean, don't you? I'm just a cleaner. I don't know anything. Please. He looks at his companions. Something passes between them. Something dark. Send the Korean a message, the scarred one says. The first punch catches me across the cheekbone. Pain explodes white-hot behind my eyes. Before I can scream, hands grab my arms, fingers digging hard enough to bruise. Then the second hit. The third. I stop counting. They leave me bleeding on wet pavement, rain washing blood from my split lip, staring up at a sky I can barely see. 2 blocks. That's all it was. 2 blocks from safety. I don't remember getting home. Fragments. That's all I have. The bus driver's concerned face when I stumbled up the steps, coins spilling from my shaking hands. The fluorescent lights of the station blurring into streaks of white. Keisha's scream when I walked through our apartment door, blood still dripping from my split lip onto the linoleum. She wanted to take me to the hospital. I said no. Hospitals mean bills. Bills mean debt. Debt means Marcus doesn't graduate. So she cleaned me up herself, hands trembling, tears streaming down her face while she pressed ice to my swollen eye and wrapped my ribs with bandages from the dollar store first aid kit. I told her it was a mugging. Random. Wrong place, wrong time. I didn't tell her about the uniform. About the message. I didn't sleep. Every breath felt like knives in my side, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw the scarred man's face, heard his voice, send the Korean a message. But when my alarm went off at 5:30, I got up anyway. You can't be serious. Keisha stood in my doorway, arms crossed, still in her pajamas. Danny, look at yourself. I didn't need to look. I could feel it, my left eye swollen nearly shut, my ribs screaming with every movement, bruises blooming across my arms like dark flowers. I can't miss a shift, I said, pulling clothes from my closet with careful, measured movements. You know I can't. One day won't. One day is $150. One day is the difference between making rent and not. I turned to face her, and the motion sent pain lancing through my side. I'll be fine. I wasn't fine. But I went anyway. The makeup took 45 minutes. Layer after layer of concealer, foundation, powder, everything I owned and some things I borrowed from Keisha. The swelling around my eye was impossible to hide completely, but I told myself it could pass for an allergic reaction. The split lip I covered with dark lipstick. The bruises on my arms disappeared under a long-sleeved shirt, even though October in LA meant I'd be sweating through it by noon. I moved through the mansion like I was made of glass. Every reach, every bend, every step sent shockwaves of pain through my ribs. I took the easy tasks, dusting surfaces I could reach without stretching, folding linens that didn't require me to lift anything heavy. I avoided the other staff. Avoided questions. But I couldn't avoid the study. It was on my schedule. Thursday meant polishing the bookshelves, watering the orchids, making sure everything was perfect for whatever meetings happened behind those heavy oak doors. I waited until I was certain Junuk had left for the day, watched his black SUV disappear down the hill, and slipped inside. The room smelled like him. Sandalwood and something darker, more expensive. I kept my head down, focused on the task, tried not to think about how much my body hurt. The top shelf. The one with the leather-bound books he never seemed to read but kept arranged in perfect order. I reached up, stretching onto my toes. And my ribs screamed. The sound that escaped my mouth was something between a gasp and a sob, involuntary and loud in the silent room. I doubled over, clutching my side, tears springing to my eyes. What was that? I froze. Baek Junuk stood in the doorway. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be gone, supposed to be anywhere but this room, looking at me with eyes like black fire, seeing everything I tried so desperately to hide. Nothing, sir. My voice came out thin. I'm fine. Just look at me. Not a request. A command. I lifted my face. For a long moment, he said nothing. Just stared. Then he crossed the room in 3 strides, gripped my chin with fingers that were surprisingly gentle, and turned my face toward the light. His eyes moved over every bruise, every shadow, every piece of damage the makeup couldn't hide. His jaw tightened. Something dangerous flickered in his expression. Who? The word was quiet. Controlled. Terrifying. Tell me who did this to you. I should have lied. I should have said I fell. Subway stairs. Clumsy accident. Anything but the truth. But his fingers were still on my chin, tilting my face toward the light, and those eyes, black and burning and seeing everything, made lying impossible. The words spilled out before I could stop them. The alley. The 3 men. The scarred one who saw my uniform and smiled like he'd found exactly what he was looking for. They said to send you a message, I whispered. That's what they called it. A message. Junuk's expression didn't change. Not at first. He just listened, still holding my face, still examining every bruise like he was memorizing them. Cataloging them. When I finished, the silence stretched so long I thought he hadn't heard me. Then something shifted. It wasn't rage. I'd expected rage, the explosive kind, loud and violent and terrifying. But this was something else. Something worse. His face went still, perfectly controlled, like a lake freezing over in an instant. The warmth bled out of his eyes until they were flat and cold and utterly empty of anything human. A message, he repeated softly. I'm sorry. I didn't know why I was apologizing. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I needed to work. I can't afford to miss. Stop. The word cut through my rambling like a blade. He released my chin, stepped back, and pulled out his phone. One tap. Then, Captain Yong. My study. Now. He hung up without waiting for a response. Sir, please. My voice cracked. I don't want anyone to get hurt because of me. It was just a mugging. I'm fine. I can still work. You have cracked ribs. It wasn't a question. Your left eye is swollen shut under that makeup. You can barely breathe without flinching. He looked at me with something I couldn't read. That is not fine. The door opened, and a man stepped in, tall, severe, with a military posture and a scar running along his jawline. Captain Yong. I'd seen him before, always at Junuk's side, always watching, never speaking. Pull the security footage from the perimeter cameras, Junuk said. Last night, between 10 and 11. 2 blocks south, near the bus stop. Yes, sir. Yong's eyes flickered to me, assessing, then back to his boss. Anything else? Find out who's been pushing into Koreatown. Vietnamese operation. Someone's been testing boundaries. Yong nodded once and disappeared. Junuk turned back to me. Describe them. Every detail you remember. I did. The scarred one, leader, Vietnamese, mid-30s, scar through his left eyebrow. The tall wiry one who held my arms. The boxer who did most of the hitting. I described their clothes, their voices, the way they moved. I didn't know I'd noticed so much until the words started coming. When I finished, Junuk was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his voice was so soft I almost didn't hear it. I'll make him beg for death. My blood turned to ice. Sir. You'll stay here tonight. He was already moving, pulling out his phone again, issuing orders in rapid Korean I couldn't follow. Guest suite on the 2nd floor. Mrs. Park will bring you clothes, food, whatever you need. I can't. My cousin, my apartment. Your cousin will be informed. Your apartment will be watched. He paused at the door, looked back at me with those cold, burning eyes. You work 60-hour weeks to pay off $52,000 in medical debt. Your brother Marcus graduates from UCLA in June. You hum gospel songs when you think no one is listening. My heart stopped. You've been invisible for 10 months, Danielle. He said my name like he'd said it 1,000 times before. Like he'd been waiting to say it. But I've seen you. I've always seen you. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a soft click. I stood in the empty study, ribs aching, face throbbing, trying to process what had just happened. I wasn't invisible anymore. And something told me I never would be again. Sleep wouldn't come. The guest suite was beautiful, cream walls, silk sheets, a bathroom bigger than my entire bedroom at home. Mrs. Park had brought clothes, toiletries, even a tray of food I couldn't bring myself to eat. Everything was soft and expensive and completely foreign, and I lay in the enormous bed staring at the ceiling, ribs throbbing, mind racing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. Not the scarred man from the alley. Junuk. The way he'd looked at me when he said my name. The cold promise in his voice. I'll make him beg for death. At 2 a.m., I gave up pretending I would sleep. The mansion was silent, but not empty. I could feel it, a tension in the air, a hum of activity somewhere beneath the surface. I pulled on the robe Mrs. Park had left and crept to the door, listening. Voices. Faint, coming from below. I should have stayed in the room. Should have buried my head under those silk pillows and pretended I heard nothing. But something pulled me forward, curiosity, maybe. Or something darker. Something that needed to see. The main staircase was too exposed, so I took the service stairs, the ones I'd climbed 1,000 times with cleaning supplies in my arms. My bare feet made no sound on the cold marble. I moved like I'd trained myself to move, invisible, unnoticed, a ghost passing through rooms that didn't belong to me. The voices led me to the basement. I'd never been down here. It wasn't on my cleaning schedule, and Mrs. Park had made it clear early on that certain parts of the house were not my concern. But tonight the door stood slightly ajar, light spilling through the crack, and I pressed myself against the wall in the shadows and looked. 3 men knelt in the center of a concrete room, hands bound behind their backs. I recognized them immediately, the scarred one, the wiry one, the boxer. Blood dripped from the scarred man's nose, and the boxer's eye was swollen shut in a mirror of what they'd done to me. Junuk stood before them, jacket removed, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. Captain Yong flanked him, along with 2 other men I didn't recognize. The room smelled of copper and fear. "Do you know why you're here?" Junuk's voice was soft. Conversational. That made it worse. The scarred man, their leader, lifted his head. "We were just following orders," Vin said. I didn't ask about Vin. Junuk crouched, bringing himself eye level with the man. "I asked if you know why you're here." Silence. "You touched someone under my protection." Each word was measured, precise, like stones dropping into still water. "You left her bleeding in the rain. On my street. In my territory." He tilted his head slightly. "Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I wouldn't care?" "She's just a maid," the boxer spat. "She's nobody." The crack of Junuk's hand across his face echoed off the concrete walls. The boxer's head snapped to the side, blood spraying from his already split lip. "She is mine." The words were barely above a whisper, but they filled the room. "Everyone who works in my house is mine. Everyone who walks my streets is under my protection. And you," he stood, straightening his cuffs with casual precision. "You thought you could use her to send me a message." He turned to the scarred man. "Now tell me. Who sent you?" The confession came in broken fragments. Nguyen Vin. Vietnamese operation pushing into Koreatown. Testing boundaries. Seeing how far they could go before Junuk pushed back. When they finished, Junuk nodded once. Just once. "Captain Yong." "Sir." "Send Vin a message. His 3 establishments in the garment district. By dawn. And them." Junuk looked at the kneeling men, and I saw something flicker in his eyes, not rage, not satisfaction. Something colder. Final. "Make it clean." I retreated before I could see more, climbing the stairs on shaking legs, heart pounding so loud I was sure someone would hear. I made it back to the guest suite and closed the door, pressing my back against it, breathing hard. By dawn, I heard the distant wail of sirens. I stood at the window and watched the sky turn pink and gold over the city, knowing that somewhere out there, 3 buildings burned and a man named Vin was learning what it cost to touch something that belonged to Baek Junuk. I should have felt horror. Fear. Something. Instead, I felt relief. The knock came just as the sun cleared the hills. I was still standing at the window, watching the city wake beneath a sky streaked with pink and gold, when the soft sound pulled me back to reality. I tightened the robe around myself, wincing as the movement pulled at my ribs, and opened the door. Baek Junuk stood in the hallway, holding a cup of tea. He'd changed clothes since the basement, fresh suit, hair damp like he'd showered, but something in his eyes was the same. That intensity. That focus. Trained entirely on me. "You should be resting," he said. "Couldn't sleep." He nodded like he understood, then held out the cup. Steam curled from the surface, carrying a familiar scent. Chamomile, with something sweeter underneath. I took it, brought it to my lips, and paused. Honey. Not sugar. Exactly how I liked it. "How did you know?" I pay attention. He stepped past me into the room, moving to the window where I'd been standing. The morning light caught the sharp lines of his profile, the ink that crawled up his neck and disappeared beneath his collar. You make tea in the staff kitchen every morning at 6:15. Chamomile, 1 spoon of honey. You use the blue mug with the chipped handle because no one else wants it. My throat tightened. You notice that? I notice everything in my house. He turned to face me, and something in his expression shifted, softened, just slightly, around the edges. I noticed when you started organizing my books by genre instead of alphabetically. I noticed that you hum Amazing Grace when you think no one is listening. I noticed that you never complain, no matter how many hours misses. Park adds to your schedule. The tea trembled in my hands. Why? Because you were different. He said it simply, like it was obvious. Everyone who works here is afraid of me. They move quickly, speak quietly, avoid eye contact. But you, he paused, searching for words. You moved like you belonged. Like the house was yours and you were just letting me live in it. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know what to do with this version of him. Quiet, almost gentle, nothing like the man who'd ordered violence with a whisper just hours ago. Come, he said. Dr. Kwan is waiting. Doctor? You have cracked ribs. Possibly a concussion. You need proper medical attention. He was already moving toward the door. And before you argue about cost, don't. It's handled. I can't let you. It's not a request, Danielle. My name again. Spoken like it meant something. Like I meant something. The doctor was a small Korean woman with gentle hands and sharp eyes. She examined me in a private clinic that looked more like a luxury spa than a medical facility, all soft lighting and leather chairs and staff who asked no questions. X-rays confirmed 2 cracked ribs. The concussion was mild but real. She wrapped my torso in compression bandages, prescribed painkillers I knew I couldn't afford, and told me to rest for at least a week. Junuk paid for everything. I watched him hand over a black credit card without even glancing at the total. In the car on the way back to the mansion, I finally found my voice. Why are you doing this? He was silent for a long moment, staring out the tinted window at the city sliding past. Because you got hurt in my territory, he said finally. Because you were targeted for working in my house. Because, he stopped, jaw tightening. Because you're not just staff to me. You never were. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and strange and impossible. Then what am I? He turned to look at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw something vulnerable in those dark eyes. Something human. I don't know yet, he admitted. But I intend to find out. The car pulled through the mansion gates, and I watched the iron close behind us like the doors of a world I was only beginning to understand. Everything had shifted. The ground beneath my feet, the air in my lungs, the careful invisible life I'd built over 10 months of survival. I wasn't invisible anymore. And somehow, impossibly, I wasn't afraid. The days blurred together in a haze of rest and recovery. Mrs. Park insisted I stay in the guest suite until the doctor cleared me, and for once in my life, I didn't argue. My body needed the rest. My mind needed time to process everything that had happened. But Junuk wouldn't let me be alone. He appeared at unexpected moments, morning, afternoon, late evening, always with some excuse. Bringing food because he happened to be passing the kitchen. Checking my bandages because he wanted to make sure they were wrapped correctly. Asking about my brother, my cousin, the books I liked to read. He never stayed long. Just enough to fill the room with his presence, to make my skin warm under that intense gaze, and then he was gone again, leaving me breathless and confused and wanting more. He's different with you, Keisha said during one of her visits. She'd been allowed to come and go freely, bringing clothes from our apartment and updates on the outside world. I've worked here 2 years. Never seen him spend this much time with anyone who isn't Captain Yong. He's just making sure I recover, I said, but the words felt hollow even as I spoke them. Keisha raised an eyebrow. Girl. The man brought you soup. Personally. Baek Jun-suk, crime boss of Koreatown, carried a bowl of soup up 2 flights of stairs. That's not making sure you recover. That's something else entirely. Something else. I couldn't name it. Didn't want to. Because naming it would make it real, and real was dangerous. But then came the garden. It was my 3rd night in the mansion, and sleep was still a stranger. The painkillers dulled the ache in my ribs but did nothing for the restlessness in my mind. At midnight, I slipped out of my room and made my way to the terrace doors, craving fresh air and open sky. The garden was beautiful at night. Jasmine bloomed along the stone pathways, filling the air with sweetness. The city glittered below like a carpet of stars, and the moon hung heavy and full over the hills. I found a bench near the fountain and sat, letting the cool air wash over me. You should be resting. I didn't jump this time. Somehow, I'd known he would find me. Jun-suk emerged from the shadows, jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked less like a crime boss and more like a man, tired, guarded, carrying weights I couldn't see. Couldn't sleep, I said. Neither could I. He sat beside me on the bench, close enough that I could feel the heat of him through the thin fabric of my robe. I keep thinking about that night. What could have happened if they'd done more than send a message? They didn't. Because you were lucky. His voice was rough. Because they wanted you alive to deliver their warning. If they'd decided differently. But they didn't. I turned to face him, and the movement brought us closer than I'd intended. Inches apart. I could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes, the tension in his jaw. I'm here. I'm alive. Because of you. You're alive because you're strong. His hand came up, fingers brushing along my jaw where the bruises had begun to fade. You went to work with cracked ribs because you couldn't afford to miss a shift. That's not luck. That's survival. That's desperation. That's strength. His thumb traced my cheekbone, feather light. I've watched you for 10 months, Danielle. Watched you carry burdens that would break most people. Watched you stay soft when the world gave you every reason to go hard. My breath caught. You see me. I've always seen you. The kiss happened like gravity, inevitable, unstoppable. His lips met mine, gentle at first, then deeper, hungrier. I tasted mint and something darker, felt his hand slide into my hair, and for one perfect moment, everything else disappeared. When we finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, I whispered, "What happens now?" "Now," he said, pressing his forehead to mine, "we figure it out together." The next morning, Captain Yong found me in the hallway. His expression was unreadable as always, but something flickered in his eyes when he spoke. "You're his weakness now. The leverage. The pressure point." I held his gaze. "I know. And you're not afraid." I thought about the kiss, the jasmine, the way Jun-suk had looked at me like I was the only real thing in his world. "No," I said. "I'm not." The conversation I'd been dreading came a week after the garden. My ribs had healed enough that I could breathe without wincing. The bruises had faded from purple to yellow, a watercolor of violence slowly disappearing from my skin. Dar. Kwan had cleared me for light activity, and I was restless, ready to return to my normal life, whatever that meant now. But Jun-suk had other plans. "I want you to move in permanently." We were in his study, the same room where he'd first seen my bruises, where everything had changed. He sat behind his desk, hands folded, expression carefully neutral. But I knew him well enough now to see the tension beneath the surface. "Move in," I repeated. "The guest suite would become your room." You'd have everything you need, clothes, transportation, security. You wouldn't have to worry about money anymore. About safety. And my apartment? My cousin? Keisha can visit whenever she likes. The apartment. He paused. You wouldn't need it anymore. I stared at him, something cold settling in my stomach. So I'd live here. Under your roof. Under your rules. Under my protection. In your cage. His jaw tightened. It's not a cage. Then what would you call it? I stood, wincing as the movement pulled at my still tender ribs. You want to control where I live. Where I go. Who watches me every minute of every day. That's not protection, Junuk. That's possession. I'm trying to keep you safe. By taking away my choices. My voice rose before I could stop it. I've spent my entire life fighting for control, control over my money, my future, my survival. And now you want me to hand all of that over because you're scared of what might happen. Scared? He was on his feet now too, dark eyes blazing. I watched 3 men kneel before me and confess to beating you unconscious. I held their lives in my hands and ended them without hesitation. I am not scared, Danielle. I am certain. Certain that there are people in this city who would use you to get to me. Certain that I cannot, will not, let that happen again. Then trust me to protect myself. You had cracked ribs and a concussion. You couldn't protect yourself. The words hit like a slap. I stepped back, stung, and something flickered in his expression, regret, maybe. But he didn't take it back. I survived, I said quietly. I've always survived. Long before you noticed me, long before any of this. I got myself through my father's death, through the debt, through every double shift and sleepless night. I didn't need a savior then, and I don't need one now. Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. I won't live in a cage, I continued, steadier now. No matter how golden it is. No matter how much you dress it up as protection. I need my own space. My own life. My own choices. And if someone hurts you again, then I'll deal with it. Like I've always dealt with everything. I met his eyes, held them. But I won't give up who I am to become your kept woman. That's not who I am. That's not who you fell for. He was quiet for a long moment. I watched the war play out behind his eyes, the need to control, to protect, to possess, battling against something else. Something that looked almost like understanding. Finally, he exhaled. What do you propose? We negotiated like 2 generals after battle. I kept my apartment, my independence, my space. I accepted discreet security, men who would watch from a distance without controlling my movements. I agreed to check in daily, to let him know where I was, to accept help when I needed it. In return, he let go. Just a little. Just enough. I need to choose this, I said when we'd finished, exhaustion and relief mixing in my chest. Not have it forced on me. I need to wake up every day and decide that this, whatever this is worth the risk. Junuk crossed the space between us, cupped my face in both hands. His thumbs traced the fading bruises on my cheekbones with unbearable gentleness. Then choose me, he said softly. Every day. And I'll choose you back. I leaned into his touch, let myself breathe. Okay, I whispered. I choose you. The restaurant was private, exclusive, the kind of place that didn't appear on any map. Hidden behind an unmarked door in Koreatown, it catered to men who valued discretion over decor. The walls were dark wood, the lighting dim, the silence heavy with unspoken threats. I walked in on Junuk's arm, wearing a dress that cost more than 3 months of my old salary. Emerald green, fitted, elegant. His choice. He'd had it delivered to my apartment that morning with a note, "Tonight, they see who you are to me." Nguyen Vinh waited at a private table in the back. He was older than I'd expected. Mid-50s, silver threading his black hair, a face that might have been handsome once before ambition hardened it into something cold. His eyes found me immediately, recognition flickering in their depths. He knew exactly who I was. What his men had done to me. Mr. Beck. Vinh stood, extending his hand. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Junuk didn't shake it. He simply pulled out my chair, waited until I was seated, then lowered himself beside me. His hand found mine under the table. Warm, steady, claiming. Let's skip the pleasantries, Junuk said. You know why we're here. Vin's smile didn't reach his eyes. A misunderstanding. My men acted without authorization. I've dealt with them accordingly. You dealt with nothing. I dealt with them. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Vin's composure cracked, just slightly. I'm prepared to offer compensation. $50,000 for the woman's medical expenses. Another 50 for the inconvenience. I don't want your money. Then what do you want? Junuk leaned forward, and I felt the shift in him, from man to predator, from lover to king. I want your word. Your territory stays where it is. Your people stay out of my streets. And you never, his voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. Never touch anyone under my protection again. And if I refuse? Then we stop pretending this is about business. Junuk's thumb traced circles on my palm, casual, possessive. I burned 3 of your establishments in one night. Imagine what I could do with a month. A year. Imagine your empire crumbling piece by piece while you watch, powerless to stop it. Silence. Vin's eyes moved to me, something calculating in his gaze. She must be extraordinary. To warrant all this. She is. Junuk didn't elaborate. Didn't need to. The negotiation ended shortly after. Vinh gave his word, for whatever that was worth, and we left the restaurant the same way we'd entered. Together, untouchable, a message written in proximity and power. 8 weeks later, I checked my bank account and forgot how to breathe. The debt was gone. All of it. $52,000, erased like it had never existed. In its place, a deposit so large I had to count the zeros 3 times to believe it. I called Junuk immediately. What did you do? Signing bonus. I could hear the smile in his voice. For your new position. New position. Personal assistant to the head of the Beck organization. Salary commensurate with the role. I cried in Keisha's arms for 20 minutes. Ugly crying, the kind that left my face swollen and my chest aching. She held me through all of it, rocking me like my grandmother used to, murmuring words I couldn't quite hear through the sobs. You deserve this, she said when I finally quieted. You hear me? You deserve every bit of it. That night, Junuk found me on the terrace, staring at the city lights spread beneath us like fallen stars. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, chin resting on my shoulder, and we stood in silence as the world turned below. I spent years building an empire, he said quietly. Territory. Power. Respect. I thought that was all there was. And now? Now you're the first thing that made me want to protect something more than territory. I turned in his arms, faced him. And what do I make you want to protect? He cupped my face, thumbs tracing my cheekbones where bruises used to be. A future, he said. With you in it. I kissed him under the stars, tasting promise and possibility. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving. I was living. And I'd chosen a dangerous man who chose me right back. She was invisible for 10 months. Drowning in debt. Surviving on faith and determination. Then one rainy night changed everything. And the most dangerous man in the city became the safest place she'd ever known. If you've ever felt unseen, overlooked, or forgotten, remember this: the right person will always find you. Let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone who saw the real you, not the mask, not the survival mode, but the person underneath? Someone who chose you when you thought you weren't worth choosing? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story made you feel something, hit subscribe. More stories like this are coming. Please subscribe now. Thanks for watching.